So I usually do these mini existential thinking sessions where I think about, okay, where do I want to go from here? Where do I want to live? Where do I see myself in, say, X years from now? And that's a hard thing to do because it's so difficult to articulate in specific detail and project into the future that I realize I'm always unable to really think this through. And I think beyond a point, books, life advice, stories, lessons, and even people literally telling you what to do pales because on many levels, context is just different. So it's not that all advice or life experiences can be easily switched or transplanted from one context to another. The question then is, how do you take advice and begin answering these big life questions? A few days ago, I was having a conversation with my parents about these questions, and I took away some meaningful thoughts. Let's take, for example, where do I want to live? Now, my thinking was that place X is better than place Y because of reasons 1, 2, and 3. But that's really not the ideal way to settle things or think about these big decisions. In fact, what's most important is to not have a list of reasons, but rather a foundational prism with which you make these big decisions. And that's what I think I learned in that conversation. I picked up how to actually develop this foundational prism and not just take decisions based on mood or one's emotional state or so on and so forth. And when I think about how to develop this foundational prism, I think it's to be so clear about what you want to optimize in life for that everything else should just flow from it. So this prism then could be anything, could be lifestyle, society, income, wealth, innovation, creativity, people. What matters is not what prism you have, but rather the existence of prism. And I thought that in my big decisions that I yet have to take so far, I didn't quite have these foundational prisms set in, or rather even one big foundational prism set in. I had a list of reasons, but definitely not a foundational prism from which I could make everything else just automatically flow. And the existence of this prism itself would fluidly lead me to the best answer more than anything. So for example, let's say if your main foundational prism for choosing where you settle or where you live is innovation. You want to be where you're the most innovative. Now, the moment you have that decided, answering this big question of where should you actually live would become much easier. And that's the litmus test of whether you have thought things through fully or not quite. Because if you have thought things through fully, then the existence of one reason will automatically lead you to the best answer. And it is often that main big foundational reason that we're missing. One of the other things that my parents shared was being grounded to my roots. Now, as philosophical as it sounds, it was used because I think it forced me to really think deep about who I am as an individual and what my roots are. Yes, answering this question is broad and generic, but the fact that it forces me to think deep is what is the purpose of this insight. What are my roots? Who I truly am as an individual. And doing this inner work is hard. But chances are that if I think hard about what my roots are, my individuality, my identity, and try to instantiate these questions with specific examples, answering the big question would automatically become much easier. But well, it's hard to do this because, of course, who even has the mental apparatus? Who even has the mental working to really answer things originally without getting influence from the outside? I think that's a fundamentally hard thing, and developing that take time and experience, so I think I'm in that process right now. So, how do you develop a foundational prism? How do you be grounded? How do you think about who you truly are as an individual? And what I learned was that answering these questions was the prerequisite for answering the bigger questions, like where do I want to go or where do I want to live? And in many ways, I think the way to deal with these bigger questions is to begin answering these prerequisite questions. The test is that if you answer the prerequisite questions right, answering the bigger questions becomes progressively easier with time. But if answering these big questions is not easier with time, chances are that there is lack of an answer of these prerequisite questions, such as what are the foundational prisms? Or what is your foundational prism? Who you are as an individual? And where your roots are. So before you delve straight into answering some of the big life questions, making some of the big irreversible decisions in life, consider that you scratch the surface a bit and first answer these prerequisites. Because I think that's one of the big keys to getting to answer the big questions easily and effectively.